Hello, everyone. My name is Rick van Bruggen from Neotechnology, and here we are again recording our Neo4j Graph Database podcast. And today I'm joined by someone who is probably in a much nicer location than I am, out in the Yorkshire Dales, Tim Nash. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Rick.
Hey,
Thank you for letting me come on your show.
Well, thank you for joining us. It's always great when people make the time. I know everyone's busy, so thanks for coming on. And Tim, first question I always ask everyone is, who are you, what do you do, and what's your relationship to graph databases? Do you mind telling us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, my name's Tim Nash. I primarily run training and consulting and development services on timnash.co.uk. Get the plug in early, and I work.
Well, by the way,
I'm primarily an e-commerce and security consultant. However, in the last few years, I've been sort of drawn into the world of WordPress, which is a content management system, and isn't my natural home and isn't the natural home for many developers. So I've been working to try and change that and show the development opportunities there are within WordPress and the content management system in the community. So I do stuff is what I describe to people who ask me what I do. And in reality, I used to write code, and now I tell people mainly how to write code.
Very, very cool. And how did you get into graph databases? What's your relationship to that wonderful part of the industry?
Yeah, so about 6 months ago, I was sitting watching a video from a conference about in-game economics, and it was all being modeled using Neo4j. And I sort of watched it and thought, do you know what? That's really cool, and I want to have a play with it. So I had a little side project that I was mucking about with and started to just play around with Neo4j and thought, wow, this is really, really useful and really interesting. And it sort of developed from there. And the more I played with it, the more I thought there's opportunities to use this in a wider platform, not just inside my little projects, and started thinking about how we could use that potentially alongside WordPress projects.
Okay. That video that you watched, that's from Yang Kui from Gamesys, I think, and he's been doing that talk on a number of conferences, among which at QCon in London this spring. And he was actually one of the first guys that came on the podcast, so there's an interesting link there.
Yeah, in fact, it was that conference video that I was watching.
Oh, so, was it? Oh,
a nice full circle for us.
Fantastic full circle. So where's the link with WordPress then? How do you see that link then?
Okay, so for those people who don't know, WordPress, as I say, is a content management system. It's built on a pretty standard LAMP stack for most parts. So in particular, it's using MySQL and PHP. Now, MySQL, while lovely as a relational database, bizarrely, in WordPress isn't really used as a relational database. So they have this idea of posts and pages and custom post types, except they all sit in the same table, posts and post meta. And individual posts and custom post types and pages have no natural way within WordPress to actually model relationships. So you're sitting there going, right, I need to link post A with post B and say what that relationship is. There's no way to do that within WordPress. Lots of developers have built their own hacks around. But as you can imagine, when you've got pretty much a flat structure like that, any hack you're putting in, or any attempt to develop this is going to result in a hack, and you're going to end up with a huge pile of extra data sitting in the database that really doesn't need to be there, and it's just really CPU and intensive to try and get this data out. So,
especially on larger sites, I suppose, right? If
you're talking a few hundred posts, it's fine, but if you're talking companies like Wired, and the New York Times and similar, who are using it as a traditional publishing platform, they have tens of thousands of articles. And then you've got sites that are using it as just a pure database storage system. One of the projects, a side project from one of the human genome people, actually published their data through WordPress. So they have not tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of posts. And very quickly, those databases creak. So I started looking at the graphing side of things and thought, well, what if we keep the relational database, but just push this data into the graphing database and then we can query the graphing database for the relationship and then pull that content back out of the relational database. And found that worked really well. And as I'd already started playing with Neo, I sort of stuck with it.
Well, very cool, very cool. And I think it's a super interesting way of doing things, right? I mean, we see that all the time that, that people actually use a graph database as a complement to their existing, relational database systems. It's a really nice fit, right? So you went about this about 6 months ago. You started this, and then where is that project now? Is it going anywhere?
So 6 months ago, I started playing with it, and at the time, I didn't have a big project to sort of foist this upon it. So it was very much my own playing around. And so when you don't have a project that you can actually immediately use it on, what you do is you jump up and down and shout a lot about something until someone gives you a project that you can use it on. I spent the last sort of 6 months or so mainly at conferences and going around and just generally talking about this idea of graphing databases. Yeah. And I've been quite lucky in some respects that well, perhaps boo and hisses from the Neo community. Obviously, Facebook's announcements with their own graphing database bits has piqued the interest of some people. So I've been able to sort of piggyback on that and say, but look, here's something that's actually working and already exists. So at the moment, it's been very much about looking at how we can do this sort of thing inside WordPress, how we can push that data across, and getting some of the larger projects to at least consider this. Now, there is a lot of precedence because 2 years ago, if you uttered the word Elasticsearch at a WordPress conference, they would just look at you and go, what sort of black magic is this? Yep. And now things like Elasticsearch is considered a almost mainstream complement to a WordPress site. So we're hoping to be able to just start introducing graphing databases and use the same sort of way that we interact with Elasticsearch and bringing that to complement with graph databases. And hopefully that means Neo will be sitting at the top of the list as it's the one that first through the door, if you like.
Yeah. So how would it work then? Every time you would update something on a WordPress site, it would automatically sort of propagate into the graph database, or would it be kept in sync in some way, or what's the idea there?
So WordPress uses actions and filters. So basically, every time you do an action on the site, there's probably some sort of event listener that's attached to it. Okay. And so with that event listener, we can push that data across. You'd probably have it as certainly in what I've been testing, it's always been a one-way push. So we're pushing data into Neo and then querying Neo. Yep. So when you hit publish on a post, or even when you hit save on a post, that data and associated post meta, so important bits and pieces that you want to query, get pushed across over into Neo. And then rather than querying WordPress via its normal search and loop system, you actually make the queries directly to Neo, which would return you back a little bit of the information that you've already given it. But more importantly, will give you back the post ID, which you can then call through your relational database.
Yeah. Well, I think there's also some interesting applications then afterwards, right? Where if you would, for example, use the data in Neo to figure out the relationships between the documents, recommend new documents, new pages, all that kind of stuff becomes possible once it's in Neo, right?
Yeah, I mean, the very first example I did of this within WordPress was for related posts. Yeah. So to be able to define related posts and let users define what they consider to be a related post. So some people might think that because the posts are written by the same author, that means that they're related, which obviously they could be. But others could be looking for more complicated relationships between various tags, or even are these posts as part of series, which actually is something that you'd think should be really obvious and easy to build into WordPress. But actually, even the ability to say these 4 posts belong to this series and should always be grouped together is something you can't easily do. But when you push this into a graphing database, saying these things are in a group, it just becomes super easy.
Yeah, very cool. Cool. So let me ask you a little bit about the future. Where do you think this is going then, and where do you see this evolve within the WordPress world, or maybe even beyond that?
Well, hopefully within the WordPress world, we'll start seeing some actual production uses of graphing databases taking data from WordPress and manipulating using them. There are some limited experiments going on at the moment. There is a couple of small production sites that are making use of it, but it's very on a small scale at the moment, and we haven't got our big publishers doing this yet, but there's a lot of interest in it. So one of the things to really helps adoption, particularly in the WordPress world, is through the use of plugins. And so the next step is to get a group of us together to actually build a common framework for plugins, so that we are not basically having to recreate the push and the sync aspect of this every single time. Yeah. Again, there's good examples of this from the work that's been done with Elasticsearch through several companies who operate inside WordPress communities. So hopefully we'll see that develop, and we'll be seeing much more sites that are making use of graphic databases in general, but in particular Neo, over the next few months and into the next year. As for that, who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe we can get you to talk about your work at some point at one of the meetups as well. That would be lovely as well, if you find the time at one point.
That would be great.
Yeah, sure. Cool, Tim. I mean, we're 11 minutes into the podcast, so I think we're going to wrap up. We want to keep these things short and snappy. So thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
No worries.
And I hope to meet you at some point in the future.
Okay, lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Bye.